So we're taking a look at adjustment. So let us consider a country that's following fixed exchange rate, and it has an overvalued currency. Okay, so what that effectively means is that we have a situation here where the value of this is higher than it should be. Now, if we were under a flexible exchange rate regime, this would adjust very quickly. And as a result, this would go down. And as a result, this would also go down, and that solves the problem. But since we have a fixed exchange rate regime, that cannot happen in the short run. This is fixed. And so this is also fixed, of course, and in the short run, this is fixed as well. So that's where we are. So what we're saying is that the currency is overvalued, which means that the value of the currency is higher than what it should be for the economy to be in its potential. Okay. So for example, if I were to give you guys an example, $1 should be 80, but suppose Bangladesh government has moved for a fixed exchange rate regime, and we find ourselves stuck in a place where this is where we are, okay? And we cannot adjust. So the value of taka is overvalued. It should not be this high, it should be lower. But because we have a fixed exchange regime, we cannot change that in the short run. Of course, this isn't a very good example because we're talking about overvaluation of the real exchange rate and not the nominal exchange rate. But hopefully you guys understood what I was talking about. So what we need is the value of taka to come down. But because we're in a fixed exchange rate regime, that's not happening. So what do we do? Let's take a look at the Phillips curve. Okay, inflation minus expected inflation is equal to, we have this times y minus yn. Okay, now what will be the outcomes of overvalued currency? Taka is stronger than it should be. As a result, our export will fall. Taka is so strong, so foreigners don't want to buy our goods because it's expensive. Similarly, imports will rise. Since taka is strong, buying goods from abroad has become cheaper for us. It's easier. So as a result, net export is going to fall. What that means is that we have a trade deficit. Because export has fallen, our production is falling. That means output is low. So these are the two major problems of an overvalued currency, is that we will experience trade deficit and our output will be falling. Output falling means what? Output is lower than potential, right? We are not in our long-run equilibrium anymore. What that means, if I were to bring this equation down here, what that means is that our output is less than our potential. And if that is the case, what we should also know is that our inflation is less than this, right? The natural rate of inflation. What does this mean? If you want to, feel free to pause the video and think about it for a little while. In fact, I encourage you to do that. What this means is that inflation is lower than the natural rate, of course, but it also means that inflation is lower than what it would be if taka, or let's call it currency, was properly valued. Okay. Now let's bring this equation again. X times P star. Okay. So now let's think about the adjustment. Over time, what's going to happen is that we have two countries. This is domestic and this is foreign. And we know that inflation is lower than what it would be otherwise, which means that this is growing at a lower rate than this, right? The numerator, suppose, for example, suppose this is growing at 5%, and ideally, P should also be growing at 5%, but it's not. Inflation is lower, so it's supposed growing at 3%. You see, so effectively what we can also say is that inflation, or domestic inflation, is lower than international or foreign inflation. I think foreign is a better word to use in this case, so fine. So that's the adjustment, is that this is growing at a slower rate than this. And what's going to happen is that as a result, this will be allowed to fall. That should be obvious to you guys why. This is fixed, this is fixed, this is not increasing, but now in the medium run, this can change. How did we understand that this will be falling? We understood it through here. We have an overvalued currency. As a result, our output would be falling. Our output would be lower than it can be. A lower output means a low inflation. And a low inflation means that domestic price level is increasing at a lower rate than international price level, which means that overall, this is falling. If that is falling, this is falling. And that's the adjustment. See, now over time, in the medium run, when we allow price to fall, this starts to fall. So, and then in the medium run, it takes time, but eventually we arrive at a point where this is equal to this, which means that this is equal to this. And now we are in our potential equilibrium. And of course, we have also experienced a depreciation. So when we have a real depreciation, which effectively means value of currency falls. When the value of our currency falls, what does that mean? That means that it's more expensive for us to buy goods from abroad, so import will fall. It becomes cheaper for foreigners to buy our goods, so X will rise. These two together means that our net export is going to increase, and X increasing, of course, means that Y is going to go up. And of course, NX going up also means that Y is going to go up. So overall, that problem is solved, right? The problem that we faced of a trade deficit and a falling output, that has been solved. So ultimately, we have to come back to this place, is that we end up in the same place, the same level of output, the same level of unemployment and inflation and everything, regardless of whether we are following fixed or flexible exchange rate. But there is that adjustment period. Okay, that's the takeaway from this section.